Monday mornings can be chaotic for marketing teams, especially if you have a weekly newsletter. You come into the office, scramble to find any last-minute updates to add to your newsletter, and then rush to send it out on time. But what if there was a better way? In this video, I'll show you how you can automate your newsletter creation process using AI the right way. So instead of having chaotic Monday mornings, you have a system that researches any industry updates and drafts a newsletter for you. So you can come into the office and not have to scramble and essentially rely on a system that produces high quality content every single week. So let's get started. So if you're new to the channel, my name is Matt Paiva and I build AI solutions for businesses, especially on the sales and marketing side of things. And I really wanted to create this automated AI generated newsletter system. And in this context, we're going to create it for a fictitious investment firm that specializes in the tech sector. I'm not exactly sure why I chose this one, but I just really wanted to play around with the idea of researching market updates throughout the week and relying on an automation to look at those market updates on a Sunday night and draft a newsletter to be sent out on a Monday morning. So whenever your marketing team comes in on a Monday morning, they just need to look at that draft, adapt and edit very little things, and just send it out using whatever platform you guys use for your newsletters. So let's get started. Let's jump into make.com and start building the scenario. All right, so why don't we get started over here in make.com, creating a brand new scenario. The idea of the scenario, like I said before, is to have it scheduled to run every Sunday night. So our trigger will actually just be a Perplexity AI step. And it's actually really interesting because in this video or in this tutorial, we're essentially going to use 3 different AI systems. We're going to use Perplexity, ChatGPT, and Anthropic, and each one of them are going to be serving a specific purpose. As you guys might know, Perplexity is really good at doing research. So that's why we're going to be using Perplexity for this first portion of research. And over here in our role, we're just going to use a user role, and we're going to paste a prompt that I had ready to go from before. So here is our prompt. It essentially says, please research and summarize the most recent developments in the technology sector of the stock market. Focus on any major gains or losses, new product announcements, or strategic moves by leading companies, and any emerging trends on regulatory changes that may influence investment decisions. Give me the top 6 updates from the past week. So really concise prompt, just instructing the system to essentially research and give us all the information that is relevant for a potential investor. And over here, one of the key things that we need to pay attention is to just save this over here and set up our trigger. So our trigger, I'm just going to save the scenario before we set up the trigger. We can see that we can run this at regular intervals. And how do we actually do the trigger the right way, right? We should select here that it should run on days of the week, and we can choose exactly when it's going to run. So for example, we can select Sunday as the day that we're going to run the scenario, or even if you want to do it like on a Monday morning to not avoid any news that you miss on a Sunday night, for example, you can change from Sunday night to Monday morning, and you can put like Monday at 1 a.m. for example. That's just a quick way to do it. And also pay attention whenever you're using your make.com account to which time zone you are selected in if you are creating these types of triggers, because this is really important. If you're using a different time zone and your automation runs with the incorrect time zone, you might just get the results at different times, and this might affect how your business runs. So let's get the first module and the trigger ready to go and out of the way for our purposes. And after we get this first result from Perplexity, I'm actually going to run just to see what type of results it's coming up with. And out of curiosity, we're going to see some citations over here and the actual message coming back for us. Here are the top 6 updates from the technology sector in the past week. S&P 500 reaches record high. AI disruption continues. Leaderboard rotation in tech. Emerging tech stocks. Regulatory scrutiny, and AI-driven growth expected in 2025. So this is all really good and really good information that we can use for our AI-generated newsletter. But one thing that I think is just best practices for content in general is to filter all of the information coming in, right? Whenever you're creating content, there's always a research step and then essentially a scripting step. And this step that we're going to include over here, it's more of a filtering step between the research and the actual content creation portion. So we're going to use an OpenAI completion over here. You can use an OpenAI assistant if you have really specific tone things that you want to keep in your newsletter. For the purposes of this video, I'm just going to include a completion, and the model that I usually go for is the 4.0 mini. So that's what we're going to select right here. And here under messages, we are going to select a system prompt, which I'm going to paste actually from a prompt that I had ready to go. This is going to look a little bit weird, so I'm just going to try to format it really quickly for us. Okay, so for our prompt for the GPT models, we're going to include the same things that we usually include. We have a role, and in this role, we're calling this system a content filterer. Couldn't really find a better word for that, so that's what we're going with right now. We also have a task, and this task essentially just instructs the AI model to read and analyze the latest tech sector news based on the output that we're going to give it. Some standard operating procedures, and this is actually the standard operating procedures. The SOPs are probably one of the most important parts for these intermediary steps because it really outlines how you want the model to think this problem through. So our first step over here is to gather the content, which is going to be given by us. So the second portion over here is to evaluate the relevance of the content, depending on a specific criteria that we're outlining over here. So this is exactly where you would include what are the contents that your audience really cares about, and what is the criteria that the AI model should follow to consider those contents whenever it's filtering. And then step number 3 over here of a SOP is to select the top stories. So like we know from before, the Perplexity AI output comes up with 6 stories, and we're going to select the top 3. And then we're going to explain the significance for our target audience over here. And there is some information over here on the formatting output as well. We also always include a little bit of context. In this case, we're just writing a little bit of context about the business. Sometimes it is really good to include a little bit of context about the workflow that this system is inserted in as well. But here, what you need to know is that we wrote, you are creating this report for Quantum Edge Capital, a fictitious specialized investment firm that caters to mid-tier accredited investors seeking early opportunities in emerging technologies. So you see how like this is a context about this fake business, which I created with ChatGPT for the purposes of this video. But here's exactly where you would include information about your business, so this model knows exactly what it's looking for. And last but not least, some examples of good outputs for this scenario. So if you already have someone doing this manually and actually filtering out the news that are coming in and delivering a report to someone who's writing this newsletter, use those as an example of a good output. So from here, we're just going to keep our system message, system and developer message ready to go. And over here, we're just going to select our user message. And here we're going to select the output of our model. We're going to click on usage, message, and not role, sorry. We're going to click on content. And we can also include with Relevance AI, the citations. And I'm going to say, here are the citations for our research. And we can include the citations down here as well. The citations come as an array, so I feel like the better way to go about it is just to select the one over here. I'm including these 2 pieces of information because when we create the actual draft, and if someone wants to take a look a little bit deeper on a specific news that is coming up, they can just go to the citations and click on the link and go straight to the link for that information. So right now, out of curiosity, actually, no, I'm not going to run this. We're going to create our Claude step. And Claude is really good at creating text that actually sounds like humans, right? So Perplexity, in this case, we're using it for research. It's probably the leading AI tool out there in terms of research. Some would even argue even better than Gemini right now, which is interesting because obviously Google is a search engine. And then from there, we're using ChatGPT to essentially do this filtering process and follow the guidelines that we want to follow to create this newsletter, or essentially to select the stories that are going to go into the newsletter. And now we're going to use Anthropic and the Claude model by Anthropic to generate these this actual like newsletter. So in terms of maximum tokens, some models allow you to like not leave anything. I don't remember if Claude allows us. I'm gonna leave it at 10,000 just so I don't have any problems while building this as of right now. But here we are going to select, I believe it's user, and we're going to paste a new type of message. We're gonna click on text. And over here, we're going to paste a prompt that I was creating before. All right, I think we have our Claude prompt ready to go. We also have a role for this. We have a task. We also have context and the standard operating procedures. This standard operating procedures is exactly what you're going to outline to say how you want your newsletter to be written. So here, for example, I included a note saying that I want multiple subject lines. So whenever the editor of the newsletter comes in, they can pick the best subject line. I also included notes on tone, notes on wording, and also notes on like what exactly should be incorporated in the newsletter. For example, this portion over here emphasize the so what factor for mid-tiers accredited investors, focusing on how each topic impacts short to mid-term opportunities. So this is really good. This is really specific for the type of business that we are creating, and this is exactly where you would include all of the SOPs that you currently have for your newsletter. If you have any templates, this is exactly where you would include it as well. And last but not least, I'm also including a formatting SOP, requesting Claude to output everything with HTML tags, essentially, because the HTML tags are going to help us create the proper document in Word and have it essentially look pretty. So that's going to make it easier for the editor to come in and not have to make that many changes when it comes to editing the newsletter. There will be headings, there will be bolds, there will be breaks, and everything in between. Because if you do use markdown formatting instead of HTML for creating Google Docs, for example, it will just come up with a weird output, and that just creates extra work for whoever's coming into the office later down the line. So that's why we have that note over there as well. By the way, if you are following along with building the modules on your computer, there is a much easier way for you to get access to this automation, which is just the link down in the description below. I have all of my templates for free in a Google Drive folder that you can have access to. Just go down in the description below and feel free to grab the templates for free and just import them into your make.com scenario. So back to the video. All right, so essentially these first 3 steps are going to be all about creating the newsletter, right? We're going to research the topics, we're going to filter the topics, and we're going to actually create using the wording and the instructions that we have for the specific newsletter. But a normal human being would write this newsletter on a specific type of document, and we're actually going to go ahead and create a Google Drive folder for the specific type of document. So let me just move this module over here and connect it over here. And we're going to go over to Google Drive to create a similar structure that a business would have whenever they are creating weekly newsletters. Let me go ahead and do that. So I imagine that you have a file over here, like a folder called newsletter, and then multiple subfolders for each one of the newsletters that you guys create for your specific business. But the thing is, this folder over here is created in a different account. So how do you actually find that account here in make.com, right? If I'm using my drive and I try to find the new folder location, nothing will pop up. So what you need to do is that you need to click on shared with me and look for that folder again. So now what we're going to do, we're going to be able to see 2 different folders. We're going to see newsletters and automation test folders. So we're going to click on newsletters, and this is essentially going to let us see the subfolders that we have in here. So if we wanted to select that other folder, we would be able to. The 2025 17th of February, which is a Monday, we would be able to select that. But instead of doing that, we want to create the next folder that is going to come up, right? The folder that's coming up for the following Monday. So what do we need to do? We need to use this same folder, the newsletters folder, to create a news folder. But how do we actually instruct Make to use, to name the folder the proper date, right? If we just say 2025 17th of February, it will always create a folder with the same name. So we need this to be a dynamic date field. And this is exactly how we're going to do it. We're going to delete this. We're going to go over to the date and time field over here. And we're going to use this exact formula that I'm going to show you. So like I said, we're going to go over here and select the format date. That's going to be our first one. And we're going to select over here the first one. We're going to click on now. As you see, like when you click on format date, it will give you a lot more information of what this formula essentially returns. And essentially what we're going to do is use the now variable, which just says like the date and time of the automation that is running. So for example, right now I'm recording the video on February 19th and it's 4:23 p.m. for me. So here it would just say 4:23 p.m. February 19th, 2025. And we're going to select over here what we want this date to look like. So for example, if I wanted to select it like this format, month, date, year, I could do it like that. But like we saw over here, we have year, month, and date. So that's what we're going to swap over here for year, month, and date. So we're going to use this type of structure to run our module for Google Drive, and this will be able to find exactly the date that we're looking for, or exactly the format of the date that we're looking for, to create the folder with the proper name. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so now that we have our folder created, we're going to use the create a document module over here. But I just wanted to make a quick note that let's say that your system already has a ongoing draft for your newsletter, and you need to, instead of creating a new document, you need to just add information to an existing document. What you would need to do in this scenario, you would go through this type of workflow over here. You would search for files and folders, and essentially here you would connect it to a specific like module over here. I guess this one just doesn't work by itself. And instead of using create a document, you would click on Google Docs and click on insert a paragraph to a document. So the key difference over here between these two workflows is that this one on top is just looking for existing files and folders within a Google Drive, and this is adding a paragraph to an existing file. So let's say you already have a draft, you would just use this over here to add the information at the bottom of your document, for example, that Anthropic is coming up with, so you can use that information later on a Monday morning. Now, if I'm creating this workflow for a business that creates the whole newsletter on a Monday morning, this is what it would look like. We would create the folder and create the document before the team comes in. Maybe the team's already doing research throughout the week and they're gathering information from before. So if that's the scenario, this essentially workflow over here, these two modules would be a little bit better than the two at the bottom. But so I don't extend myself too much on a hypothetical, let's focus on this part over here. So what are we going to name our document? We can name our document newsletter draft, and newsletter draft, and over here we can include the same name as the folder, just for the sake of organization. So this is newsletter draft, and then the name of the date that we have on the main folder. And in the content over here, we are going to select a specific output from our Anthropic outputs over here. No, here we're going to click on text response, if I'm not mistaken. And then here, whenever we're choosing a drive, we're going to click on shared with me. And here we're going to find the new documents location. And what we can do is we can map this information out, right? We can click on the folder ID, and this will essentially inform this create a document file what folder to input this document in, right? So here, essentially, we're just moving the information from the creative folder to this new module over here. Now, let me double check if this text response is actually the one that we're going to need for this automation. And why is this giving me updates? There we go. So there we go. Actually, this will be pretty much the core build that we have. We can also include an output at the very end over here, like a Gmail or a Slack message, just sending an email to the correct person, letting them know that we have a draft ready to go. But if this is a workflow that is already like known and understood in your business, whenever the person in charge of the newsletter comes in, they might just go to the folder directly and find the information there. This is kind of just a redundancy that's nice to have to let all team members know what's going on, essentially a notification step at the very end. But over here, I'm going to not include that, keep it simple. And here we can run a test run just to see what the output's looking like. Okay, so we had an error on our Anthropic module over here, and I see what the error was about. I included 10,000 maximum tokens, and instead I think the limit of Anthropic is 8,192. So we're just gonna go ahead and swap this over here, see if it works now. I like to show these errors whenever I'm building things live, because I know that whenever you guys are building these things in your computers, you're gonna have errors. So this is normal to have, and just fix them whenever they come. And let's see if this runs by just running this module only. I think it's not going to have the input from the previous two modules. Oh, and one critical thing, I forgot to include the output from the previous module over here. So at the very end, I'm just going to make sure to include the output of this module over here. Consider this output, and then content at the very bottom. Let's save this, and let's run the automation once. So there we go. It looks like the automation ran successfully. And what I'm most curious about is just to go to that Google Drive folder and see what it comes up with. Let's just do a quick refresh over here. There we go. There's a new folder with today's date, exactly how we want it to be. And then the newsletter draft 2025. So if we click over here, we have a fully formatted, I'm just going to click on I understand, a fully formatted newsletter for us to essentially send out to our users. And interestingly enough, it even included a copyright note at the very bottom over here. So let's see what exactly it came up with. So it looks like formatting wise, it looks really nice. We have colors, we have different subject line options, but I feel like it lacked a lot of the content coming in from relevance. So I'm gonna do one extra change over here. And instead of including just the output coming from ChatGPT, we're going to include the output coming in from Relevance AI or from Perplexity AI. Right, so I'm gonna include both the content and here are the citations. That's what I'm gonna say. Here are the citations in case it wants to include over at the end, because I feel like it's nice, it's nicely formatted. I like the wording, but it's still really broad. And I want it to be a little bit more specific. So let's try this again one more time. Okay, nice. So it created a new file over here. It kept the same formatting that looks really nice for our purposes. It's suggesting a few different subject lines as well. Really nice. And it shows a few more or different types of key points that it chose for the newsletter. For example, in this first one, it says about AI landscape transformation, market performance outlook, and emerging sector trends. And over here, it renamed it in a few different ways, right? It started with market overview, then key investment insights, and it broke down between these two ones, and strategic recommendations. So depending on what your company wants, one or another output might be completely different. And the only way to actually figure out which one's going to be better is to attempt these, right? Like create these with different types of inputs and different types of outputs. You guys just saw that I came back over here and I added the Perplexity output to our Claude input, and that changed completely what our newsletter looks like. And essentially the idea here is to play around with these inputs and outputs until you have your ideal newsletter coming out. So within a couple of tries, I guarantee that you should be able to find a really nice sweet spot. So your newsletter editor can come in and look at it and be like, this is actually something that I'm really happy with. Change a few different words, copy that information, paste it into MailChimp or whatever software you use for your newsletter, and start engaging your audience first thing in a Monday morning. So I hope you were able to follow along with this automation, essentially building your AI generated newsletter for your marketing team in your business. And if you weren't able to follow along and build while we were building together, you can just go down in the description below. And like I said before, just grab the templates from there and download it into your make scenarios. The key thing that I wanted to show with this video is just to show how these different platforms serve a specific purpose in this automation: Perplexity for search, ChatGPT for filtering, and Anthropic for the actual creation of the content, as well as the few hints that you might have picked up on using date fields to create specific names of folders for essentially unique identifiers of folders for different types of scenarios. So I hope you were able to pick up on that as well. If you're having any trouble setting this up on your computer or essentially downloading the templates, feel free to reach out to me via email and I'll gladly help you. And if you want to build different types of systems, maybe something a little bit more complex, feel free to book a call with me down below. There is a calendar link. The call is completely free and I can see if I can help you build what you're trying to build. Now, with that being said, there are many other videos in this channel talking about automation and about AI. So if you want to start saving time and saving money for your business and even essentially focusing more on generating more money for a business, just feel free to go and watch this video over here. I'm sure that you will enjoy it as well. So that's everything that I had for you today. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.